ever really thought about the link between what's on your plate and how you breathe? Well, today we're diving into the pretty amazing and surprising science that connects our food to our lungs. Let's get right into it. You know the feeling, right? You've just finished a big, satisfying dinner. You lean back in your chair, and all of a sudden, it just feels a little harder to get a full, deep breath. It happens to so many of us. But what's actually going on in there? Or, hey, maybe for you, it's something else, like that little tickle in your throat, that cough that shows up after a glass of wine, or maybe a spicy dish. These things aren't just random. Nope, they're actually clues, and they're pointing to a much, much deeper connection. And all these little clues, they lead us right here to what we're going to call the breathing mystery. These are the kinds of experiences people talk about all the time, but for a long while, connecting the dots was, well, it was tricky. Until now.
And let's be super clear about this. This is not just in your head. Science is now confirming that these feelings are real. They're caused by actual, measurable biological signals bouncing between your digestive system and your respiratory system.
So, how in the world are your stomach and your lungs talking to each other? Well, the answer is in this totally fascinating, groundbreaking idea that is changing everything we thought we knew about respiratory health. It's called the gut-lung axis. Okay, I want you to picture a superhighway running directly between your gut and your lungs. All day, every day, messages are flying back and forth along this highway, carried by immune cells, zipping along nerve signals, and even sent by these incredible little compounds made by your gut bacteria. And look, this isn't just some minor detail in a textbook. This is a real game changer. Understanding this gut-lung axis is honestly one of the biggest leaps forward in respiratory science we've seen in years. It gives us a whole new lens to understand why our airways get irritated. Okay, so we know this superhighway exists. But how do the messages actually get sent? How does a burger and fries actually end up affecting your breath? Well, it turns out the research points to 4 main routes, or pathways. So there are 4 main ways this happens. First, you've got the inflammatory pathway, where some foods basically sound a fire alarm that irritates your airways. Then there's the oxidative stress pathway. Think of this as a kind of stress on a cellular level that can harm lung tissue. Third is that gut-lung axis we just talked about, that direct communication line. And finally, the neurorespiratory reflex pathway, which is all about super fast nerve signals. Okay, this is where it gets absolutely wild. A huge study showed that in just 4 hours, after eating a single high-fat meal, people with asthma showed a noticeable increase in airway inflammation. And get this, their rescue inhalers actually worked less effectively. It just perfectly shows how fast and direct this whole connection really is. All right, so we get the how, we know the pathways. But that leads to the really big question, right? The what? What foods are we actually talking about here? Let's get practical. So on a big picture level, your overall eating pattern matters a ton. On one side, you have the Mediterranean diet, packed with fruits, veggies, healthy fats, which actively works to calm down inflammation. But on the other side, you've got the typical Western diet, which is full of saturated fats and refined sugars, and it does the exact opposite. It fuels that inflammation. But it's not just about the big picture. Sometimes it's about specific little compounds hiding in our food. Take sulfites, for example. You find them in things like wine and dried fruit as a preservative. When you consume them, they release sulfur dioxide gas, which is a known irritant for our airways. And this isn't some super rare thing. Research shows that for about 5 to 10% of people with asthma, sulfites are a direct trigger. They cause something called bronchoconstriction, which is literally when your airways tighten up and make it harder to breathe. And honestly, the list of these direct links goes on and on. Dietary fiber is like a superhero. It feeds your good gut bacteria, which then make protective stuff for you. Then you've got capsaicin, the heat in chili peppers. It can directly poke at your cough reflex nerves. Even an ice-cold drink can trigger a reflex that makes your airways tighten up for a second. It's amazing how many different ways this can work. And now, after hearing all that, I know it's really tempting to just make a simple list of good foods and bad foods. But the science is telling us to do something way more interesting and way more powerful. It wants us to look at our own personal blueprint. And here we are. This is probably the single most important takeaway of this entire explainer. The science could not be more clear on this point. There is no one-size-fits-all diet when it comes to breathing. What might cause a reaction in me could have absolutely no effect on you. Why is that? Why are we all so different? Well, it's because every single one of us is our own unique biological universe. Your genes, the specific family of bacteria living in your gut, how sensitive your airways are to begin with, all of these things and more create a unique personal filter. It means your body and my body can process the exact same food in totally different ways. The goal here isn't to chase some perfect diet or to feel restricted. That's not it at all. The real goal is empowerment. It's about becoming a curious scientist of your own body, learning to notice your patterns, and then using that knowledge to make choices that genuinely make you feel better. And that leaves us with one final, and I think really powerful question to think about. The science gives us the map, but the journey of discovery is all yours. So what do you think you might find written in your personal food blueprint?